It's the week of May 21st, 2018, and Roll for Crit is here to give you your weekly board game news roundup. So get out your cardboard and your meeples and let's get to newsin'.
Speaking of exciting newsin', the Spiel Jahres nominees have been announced for 2018, as well as the other awards they give out. This is a big deal. This is sort of the biggest awards in board games, if you don't know. For the Spiel Jahres, we have Azul, which we have actually played, Luxor, which is a game by Queen Games, and The Mind. Now, Azul we have talked about before. Really cool game involving tile patterns. Luxor is sort of this treasure-gathering game involving cards in hand and deciding which ones to play in order to move forward. And The Mind is actually a game involving playing numbers in the right order with other people, but you're not allowed to talk. So some interesting ones. Like I said, Azul we've actually played and is out now to buy, so if you want to try that out. Luxor actually has a Kickstarter going right now for its second run, so you can get that way. The Mind, unfortunately, I don't think is out right now in English, so keep an eye out for that, though.
They also announced the nominees for the Spiel Jahres, which are sort of the more heavier board games that they give out awards for. In that category, we've got some interesting ones, such as Die Quacksilber von Quedlinburg. You guys know that one. Quedlinburg, I think, excuse me. Ganz schön clever, and Heaven and Ale. And there's also, they gave out a Sonderpreis award to Pandemic Legacy Season 2. Sonderpreis is sort of their special mention for a game that doesn't really fit into every other category, and that's something they don't always give out every year. I think it's somewhat infrequent that they actually have that available, so it's interesting that they decided to give that to Pandemic Legacy Season 2 this year. I guess, they wanted to give something to a Legacy game. We also got Season 1 Legacy as well, though, a few years ago, and I can't remember if that was nominated for something. I kind of think it was.
I think it was the Kinder.
I think the Kinderspiel, you mean, not the Kinderspiel.
Not the
That's
Kinder.
for the children's.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that this year they decided to, maybe because it's a sequel?
I actually think that the reason why I got it is because it's a sequel game that hasn't been done before. Like, we've seen Legacy done, but never like, well, here's what happened. And here's Season 2. Like, it actually feels like a TV show when you want to keep with the story and stuff, and it's not just, oh, look, same pandemic, but we added some weird thing. No, it's sort of almost the reverse. You have to find the world. So I think that's one of the reasons why it was nominated for this award.
Yeah, could be. And as you said, they do also have the Kennerspiel. That's one for the children's, with some fun games in there, such as Funkelschlatz. Funkelschlates. I don't know. I took 2 semesters of German. I do know ganz schön clever means pretty clever. But some of the games that we haven't heard of that we looked up and read about sound pretty interesting. The Mind sounds a lot like the game.
I actually looked that up.
Yeah.
That was very funny because someone posted that on Board Game Geek, and then all these people like, any relations are like totally surface. You got to go deeper, and the game's completely different. I'm like, okay,
yeah. But definitely in the same genre as well as Hanabi. It sounds like.
Right. That's definitely I think has that sort of non-silent sharing aspect to it. But it's definitely because of the Kinderspiel, not Kinder, versus the Spiel Jahres is more advanced. I think it's easier to judge Spiel Jahres in particular because we've actually played one, and you can actually see one on Kickstarter and see how it plays. And I will say that Azul, we're both pretty big fans of. We enjoyed it a lot.
I liked Azul. Yeah. I will definitely say I am in a camp where I think maybe it's a little overrated.
I think that's fair, but
like, I completely get why it's nominated for the Spiel Jahres because it seems like, yeah, of course, it's like the game made for that almost. But I almost put it in the same category as Splendor, which also was the Spiel Jahres, where it's like, yeah, it's a pretty good game, just not my thing as much.
I did like that a bit more than Splendor, personally. Luxor, I read on, because I have not played, and it seems to be sort of a moving to get treasure and you get points in the end. But the way you move actually is you have a hand of cards you can't rearrange. You have to use the left or right action. So that sounds interesting, but once again, it's like, I want to play first. Same thing with The Mind. It sounds like maybe just a simple number thing, but really want to play before I say whether I think it's better or worse than the other two.
Yeah.
And as for the Kinderspiel games, what they actually are, even though they're not in English titles, I read up, one is you actually are playing sort of, I think they're called like tricksters or something in German.
Okay.
And you're actually grabbing resources to try to make brews. It's almost like a press your luck game. Like, do you make a smaller brew so you can get more resources later, or push your luck, but if you get too many of one ingredient, it could ruin it. So that sounded interesting. One was about just brewing ales and seemed like sort of just a worker placement game.
A lot of brewing going on.
Yeah. We all want to get drunk. So, but the problem is, like with these games, as I said, they're usually a lot more complicated, which means you definitely need to sit at the table. You can't even, because I'm like, one mechanic, without playing it, could make or break it for some people.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring that up, because there was actually a place where one of the jurors of the Spiel des Jahres had some comments about their process and what games they picked and didn't pick. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he said was that this was a year where, more than any other year, they disqualified a lot of games right off the bat for having poor rule books. And saying that he actually said, kind of like threw some shade at board game designers, saying that he was tired of the Spiel des Jahres jury being used as guinea pigs for hastily made games to try to get them in on time. And then later they like cleaned up the rule book and they just threw a bunch out because they were just hard to explain.
Does he have a list? Because I'd love to see.
He did not name names.
But I completely agree, because there have been times when we've had games and we were almost angry, not because the game's actually bad, but because we're just like, what do we do?
Happens all too often, yeah. So it's nice to see someone speaking out about it. But I think we both probably agree, based on almost no actual information of our own. Mm-hmm. Azul seems like the front runner to win this. Right?
Possibly. I've heard of a lot of talk about Luxor though before this.
Okay.
I don't know about the mine. First time I've heard of it, so we'll see.
Game designer Nikki Valens has announced that she is going to be leaving Fantasy Flight Games after working there for around 5 years now. She is the lead designer of games like Eldritch Horror and Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, games that we're fond of over here. And she posted a tweet saying that she is proud to announce that she's leaving from Fantasy Flight, but she will still be working on more game ideas, possibly even video games as well as board games in the future. But hasn't shared any details beyond that in terms of why she's leaving exactly or where she plans to go next. But this is kind of a significant leaving, because she's also worked on all of the Eldritch Horror and Mansions of Madness expansions. Mm-hmm. So going forward with Fantasy Flight, both of those games may be, especially Eldritch Horror, they might not produce any more expansions. They might just say it's finished now, or it might feel different or go in a different direction if someone new takes over that line.
Yeah, definitely interesting, because I've actually played I just got my hands on the most recent Eldritch Horror expansion. I messed around with it, the Gnarlatep one. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty cool, and it had this weird campaign mode in it. They added. I haven't tried that out yet, but it sounded interesting, and it almost felt like reading it, I was like, this sounds cool, but would have been cooler if you actually did like Pandemic Legacy, but with Eldritch Horror, because I think that could actually work really well. So now that this is leaving, I'm like, okay, maybe I don't want that anymore. Because
well, I know that she also did a game called Legacy of Dragonholt, and it sounds like in general she was interested in exploring the more like storytelling-based kind of influence in games.
And what I'm interested about was really the wording. I'm proud to announce I'm leaving.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up as well, because it sounds like maybe there's some bad blood there between them. She wasn't being treated well, which is would be a very big deal to hear, because I mean, Eldritch Horror and Mansions of Madness are definitely like two of the crown jewels in Fantasy Flight's lineup.
No, so, the Arkham World card world
universe
games is very well for Fantasy Flight. Does very well.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely be sticking around to see where she goes next.
I'm definitely excited that she mentioned video games, because, as you said, she worked on these two very Lovecraftian games. If she can bring that sort of Lovecraft knowledge and already game mechanics she's worked with into a video game, I think it could help fill a hole I don't think has been really filled in video games yet. We've got another Ticket to Ride game coming out titled Ticket to Ride New York. However, unlike usually the other Ticket to Ride, insert country, name, or city, instead of just having that map to build trains on, you will actually be using taxis trying to visit landmarks and complete destination tickets. It's almost more like you're playing a tourist game. Supposedly, you can learn the game in 3 minutes. We'll see, be the judge of that. And the game plays for about 10 to 15 minutes, so it's a lot shorter than all the other Ticket to Ride games. This is definitely meant to be a much lighter, quick game. I believe it's going for about $20 when it comes out. So definitely something interesting, because it has the title, but it's not we've reskinned it with the New York scenery.
Yeah, that's very interesting. The artwork also is similar to traditional Ticket to Ride, but I feel like it has more of a almost a 50s, 60s vibe to it. The colors are sort of more vibrant.
Oh yeah, we should mention, I don't know if I mentioned, but this is 1960s era timeline,
that
not
makes
modern.
sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. I would love, I think it would be interesting for if there was a modern day version. I say modern because I don't know my New York 1960s that well, but that there wouldn't just be the taxi area, but there could be subways, so you could actually so there's multiple routes.
Right.
Because I know plenty of times when we go to New York, we'd be like, okay, let's take the subway from here to here, though, but then we can use this to here.
Yeah, that's what I would think of when they say a Ticket to Ride New York, but yeah, they're going for instead just a really light,
which I understand,
quick version. And it is, the board is small, like you can see the paths are not nearly as long, and this is also going to be another Target exclusive, but we've commented, at this point, that's almost like saying it's going to be on Kickstarter. It's like every other game is that. I kind of wish they had called it like Ticket to Ride something that isn't just a city. So
exactly.
You would know from looking at the box that this was a smaller version.
And like if they did make the idea that I said, if it was longer and that did have, you could go on the subway for a little bit, then take a taxi, and that was New York because it's bigger and really going to all the boroughs and something, and then of course you throw King in New York to destroy everyone.
Maybe there'll be an expansion so you can be just as big as the other games later on. Another smaller pared-down version of a bigger game is Agricola, All Creatures Big and Small, a game based on the original Agricola board game, but just for 2 players. They have announced they are coming out with a big box version of that game, which includes the original base game as well as 2 expansions all in one. Which is kind of funny because, this game was meant to be a smaller version of Agricola for just 2 players, cheaper. And now they're putting it in a big box with the expansions. Sort of seems to, defeat the purpose of that a little bit.
No. I want a huge game, but only you and I can play. So the third person just has to watch us.
Yeah, I guess there's a market for that. And I'm not sure if now they're going to be positioning this as the main set going forward, or if they will still have the original version alongside those 2 expansions.
I don't know. When I hear big box,
usually
my mind usually
it's
jumps
separate, right?
Yeah, usually it's separate because I think of like Dominion had a big box. Almost every Queen Games has a big box.
Yeah,
and they usually sell the regular with that.
But in this case, I thought because it's only 2 expansions. But then they probably wouldn't call it a big box if they were going to do that.
I would be more interested probably thinking of a regular Agricola having a big box, because I know that has a lot more expansions, like there's the different color decks and stuff, like that would probably could use.
Seems like that's the way to go, except that they, now like revamped that, and then you have to buy the colors and...
No, that's what I'm saying, because they have the new revamped version and have all the stuff.
Hopefully we'll get there next. Anyway, this might come out at Gen Con, but it's slated for 2018, so we'll see if it gets there in time.
Earlier this week, PAX Unplugged tickets went on sale. These go for $30 for a single day or $65 for the whole weekend. This will be November 30th to December 2nd this year. We went last year for their first PAX Unplugged and had a really great time. Thought it was really cool, and I honestly felt a little different than the really heavy hubbub that was Gen Con.
Yeah, if you're someone who either can't make it out to Gen Con, you live on the East Coast, or Gen Con's too crowded, too expensive, this is a really great, smaller alternative to that. It doesn't have as much of the, excitement of all the really super new stuff.
We should say for now, because it's the first one, and odds are it builds.
You never know what could happen in the future, but there's definitely a ton of stuff you'll get to play. And like when we went, they had like stuff from Essen that was there, because it's like right after that happens, pretty much. So
yeah, definitely, it was really cool because the testing era that's how we got to play a lot of the big games, like Azula we mentioned before.
Yeah.
In addition, it's also nice because you're in Philadelphia, which is, if you're on the East Coast, a lot of easy ways to get there, train and stuff, and cool things to check out around there as well.
So hit it up.
So that's been our news roundup for the week of May 21st, 2018. Let us know what you think about the awards. Have you had the chance to play some of them? Do you think a nominee shouldn't be nominated, or something got snubbed from a nominee? Let us know. Like we said, we've only had a chance to play a couple of these usually when they announce them, and we don't get to play the rest till after the winners are announced. So if you actually had the chance to play maybe more of them, let us know.
Yeah, give us your insights. We're hungry for that insight.
So good. But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this is Roll for Crit News.
Don't forget to click that like button and, of course, subscribe for even more excellent videos.
I subscribed and now I'm rich.